Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Yep, across the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com, where you'll find the links to the podcast and to the social media sites and, of course, to the audio-only live stream, which is up and running right now. Also, of course, across the state of Alaska on this your favorite radio station and or translator. Welcome to Tuesday. It is beautiful. It is beautiful, man. It's beautiful. It's Tuesday. There are no tacos, although, man, I could really go for some bacon tacos right now. It is Tuesday, which means that it is the Tuesday Top 3. Brad Keithley from Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets is going to be joining us on the program today. And we are going to be listening to him talk about a couple things. His big 3 today is the lack of fiscal plan. I suppose I should turn that on. Lack of fiscal plan here in the state. And the other thing that's always missing from the stories on K through 12, the K-12 issue. And then finally, apparently, Brad's got a little bit of an issue. He's going to take the Alaska Policy Forum to the woodshed and ask him some questions. Like, what could you be thinking? Anyway, it's going to be fun stuff. So that's going to be the weekly top 3 today with Brad Keithley, where we're going to dissect and discuss and talk about and beat down and massage and fluff up and it's the beatings will continue until morale improves. That's what's going to be happening. So that's going on in the weekly top 3 this week in the first hour. In hour 2, we will probably rehash some of the things that we went over with Brad, and I will give you my full hot take on the discussion. And then we'll be joined by Chris Story, the man from Homer, who's going to come in and give us our weekly positivity boost. I have no idea what Chris is going to talk about. I normally don't. Heck, half the time when I get done talking to him, I have no idea what we talked about, but I feel better, right? I feel better. No, it's I need that. I need that weekly positivity boost that it's good stuff. It's good stuff. So, that's the show for today. We'll finish up probably with some phone calls if I could make the stupid phone system work properly without everybody getting, it's going to be good. All right. So, where do we want to start? Where would we like to start in all the stuff that we want to be able to and all the stuff that we want to be able to do it. Maybe we should start off with this story from David Boyles over at Must Read Alaska, who has got he nails it in just the headline of this article that he wrote and contributed to Must Read. Alaska education industry wants your PFD, but will our graduates even be able to read their diplomas? I mean, this is ow. And he goes over the whole mantra and everything that we've been seeing, including the BSA has been flat funded since 2017, which is actually that's not even true. I mean, the base has been flat funded. BSA has been flat funded since 2017. That's not even the Alaska Beacon has an article out talking about ahead of education funding bill. Supporters of Alaska public schools pitch their case. And they go on to say the Alaska legislature hasn't increased the public school funding formula known as the base student allocation since 2016, but has intermittently improved one time. But that's not true. It went up 4%. Now, maybe that's not the 17% that they wanted, but it did get it. See, this is the thing. It's like these little lies of omission that you hear all the time. I mean, if you were journalists who were unbiased, you would at least admit that it has gone up, just not to the level to which supporters want, right? I mean, that's it, because it has increased. It has been, anyway, sorry, I sidebarred there for just a second. Anyway, he goes on to talk about how the base student allocation, that is set for an increase and what's going on. And then he talks a little bit about educational outcomes and everything else. This is a fantastic article from David Boyle. So you should probably go read it over at Must Read Alaska. I will drop a link into the chat room so that you could take a look at it yourself and seeing what's going on. And of course, I didn't even mention the fact that the BSA really is about bolstering overhead. It's not like that money gets directly into the classrooms, right? I mean, that money is mostly about overhead, taking care of administrators and costs and things like that. It's not money that's getting directly into the classroom. In fact, what was it? Sarah Vance had said something like only 46% of every dollar going into the school system actually makes it into the classroom. I mean, when you've got 54% of your overhead or 54% of your budget being eaten up by overhead, you may want to talk about that. You just might want to do it. Talk about landing on your feet. Heidi Drygas, who was, of course, the former commissioner of labor and workforce development under Governor Bill Walker, and his former running mate for this last gubernatorial race, has now become the leader of the Democratic executive director for the Alaska's State Employees Union. Yeah. It's good. She's the, Good to know that no matter what happens, you can always land on your feet and get that job you wanted, slurping off the governmental teat all over again. I mean, it's just good on you. Good for you. Good for you. And then Kevin McCabe, our friend Kevin McCabe, our friend and my exalted representative, has got an opinion piece in Must Read Alaska talking about defined benefits. And he goes on to basically break it down Barney style for all of us out here in the world. I mean, this is a kind of a rehash of a lot of the things we talked about yesterday, but this is a great piece for those who are foolish enough not to listen to the Michael Duke Show to get all the details on this. And in fact, he goes into some discussions about about other places that have been damaged and injured by the defined benefits program. To squirm out of bankruptcy in 2014, Detroit politicians cut existing defined benefit pensions by almost 5% and eliminated other benefits entirely. Some benefit loss was even retroactive. Retirees had to give money back as well as pay for health care plans. Now, the problem here in the state of Alaska is that we basically have a clause in our Constitution that says that those contracts with state employees essentially become constitutional amendments, that you're breaking the Constitution if you break faith in the defined benefits. So we wouldn't be able to do like Detroit did. Or Rhode Island in 2011, they realized that they had saved only 56% of the money needed to fund Rhode Island's pension promises, their defined benefit plan. To avoid the disaster, they spent 4 years overhauling the state defined benefit plans. Retirees past and future lost some of their supposedly defined benefits. Now, of course, again, we can't do that here in the state of Alaska because of that stupid clause in our Constitution. Defined benefits pensions are sometimes called the golden handcuffs. They penalize people who switch employees too soon. But they also are the golden handcuffs for the state because we are locked in no matter what. Again, you can go out and read this piece from Kevin McCabe over at Must Read Alaska as well. So it's just a few of the bullet points on the headlines that I want to hit you guys with this morning. And yes, I have not had my coffee yet. So just in case you were wondering, that's how it all gets down. And what was the final piece that I wanted to talk about? I guess I'll talk about this. This is my good news segment for today. From KTUU. Alaskans are once again making their presence known on the national culinary scene. 3 chefs and 1 restaurateur have receiving the nominations for the James Beard Foundation Award this last week. According to Lael Fairbairn, the managing member for Snow City Cafe, Spenard Roadhouse, South Restaurant, and Coffee House and Crush Bistro, said Alaska in general is a lot more cosmopolitan from the aspects of we like quality. We've seen other places and we've chosen to live here because of how beautiful it is. For Renee Trafton, chef and owner of the Beak Restaurant in Sitka, the nomination for Best Chef has been a career goal. She said the quality of ingredients play a part. She said the fish here is the best in the world. I'm really passionate about cooking fish. Over the years, I've been in the business since 2017. I've cultivated relationships with fishermen, and that's really fantastic because I can get the highest quality fish. Sorry, the way that they literally wrote this from a direct quote, and it's like, I've cultivated relationships with fishermen, and that's really fantastic because I get the highest quality fish with not much difficulty. You know what I mean? I love it. I love it. Congratulations to her, by the way. Second year in a row, Chef Nathan Bentley and Altura Bistro in Anchorage have been nominated in the Best Chef category as well. He said it feels amazing. It really does. Born and raised in Anchorage, Bentley went through UAA's culinary program to get his start. Bo Schuler, chef and co-owner of In Boca Alupo in Juneau, says that although his name is on the award, it's a team effort. We got a really good staff here. We got a really good front house that makes people feel welcome whenever they walk in. So I got to say, just a good team effort. Fairbairn, who's nominated for Outstanding Restaurateur, was putting together the business plan for Snow City Cafe 25 years ago. She felt Anchorage was underserved in the restaurant market, but not anymore. They've got a wide variety of restaurants. So they'll find out at the end of March whether or not they won any or all of the awards. So congratulations to 4 Alaskan chefs nominated for the prestigious James Beard Award. That's a little piece of good news for people, non-political, because everybody has to eat. Everybody likes to eat. I definitely like to eat. I mean, come on, seriously. All right, we got to go. Brad Keithley coming up and joining us, another man who likes to eat. Well, sometimes. I mean, you know. Let's continue. We got more coming up. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay. Sorry, I just accidentally killed something that I wasn't supposed to kill. I mean, not kill, but closed. You know what I mean? I wouldn't actually kill something. That would be inhuman and cruel. Now, what am I saying? It doesn't matter. All right. Come on. Come back to me. Come back to me. Yes, right there. There it is. Got it. All right. Damn, son. Get us all going on Tuesday morning. You ready to go? I see that Brad is thoughtfully stroking his jaw in the green room, wondering why he continues to come on this program, because, my God, he could do better things with his morning than come on here. To which I say, poppycock, best use of your time ever. Best use of your time ever. Good morning, my friend. How are you doing?
Michael, I'm doing great today. How about you?
You know, not too bad. Not too bad. I see we're both sweatshirted up with some of our favorite things. So, I mean, you know, what is this? Casual Tuesdays? I mean, what the heck, man?
It's chilly in the morning Tuesdays.
Yeah, it's not now. I grabbed it this morning. I looked at it and went, that feels about right this morning. So
are you gonna fire your producer for, killing things?
Yes, I'm going to fire him and then rehire him immediately because there's nobody else to do his job. Going to fire him and scold him, and then, he'll be rehired with extra pay. That's the thing. Every time I rehire him, he's got to get more pay. So try not to fire him too much. Anyway, how's life treating you, Mr. Keithley? What's happening in your neck of the woods?
I'm doing good. I'm down visiting my mother. I come back to Alaska next week, but I'm down visiting my mother, but it's cold down here. It's like 8 degrees or 7 degrees.
Oh man, it's like what's the old thing say here? It's 29 degrees here. You're in the wrong neck of the woods.
What am I doing? I'm backwards here.
Yeah,
maybe I'm the problem, not the temperature.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe the problem is Brad is following Brad. Stay down there, Brad. You don't need to come home yet. It's fine. Well, I hope your mom is well, and I hope that everything continues to go well here. I've been reading your stories, reading the stories that we've been discussing back and forth, and then, of course, the ones for the weekly top 3 today. I got to say, I have been in the past a fan of James Brooks. I thought he was a pretty decent journalist, although not as always as balanced as I'd like to see. But this piece on education, I just got to tell you, there are so many things that are, I mean, it's almost become blatant advocacy journalism at this point. It's really frustrating and disappointing.
For a long time, I thought the issue was the editorial, the edit process that they go through at the ADN, that some of the things were being taken out in that edit process or being directed in that edit process. But it's still showing up now that he's moved over to the Beacon. It's still showing up in the Beacon, and maybe that's Kitchenman that's still directing the editorial process. But there's some gaps in here. You will focus on different things than I do in this story, but there's some huge gaps in here that I think is doing a disservice to Alaskans.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, just again, the first falsehood that immediately caught my eye down in the, I don't know, second or third paragraph, where it basically says they haven't increased the public school funding formula, the BSA, since 2016. But they have increased it. Now, maybe not as much as people want. I mean, it was whatever it was, a 5%, 6%. They just wanted 17 or 20%. And so they're acting like nobody, like the person, the casual observer who's not been following this would look at this and go, oh my God, they haven't increased education since 2016. How do we do that? And yet, again, we had Sarah Montalbano on from APF, and she's talking about it's since 2000 and whatever it was, 2006, 35% increase in education funding since 2006. 35%. That's it's hard to swallow. I'll just say that was the most glaring thing to me. Sorry, I didn't give you a chance to respond, but we're coming up on it. So
it's your show.
I know. It shouldn't be. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show. All right, we're continuing now. Brad Keithley from Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets comes on board every Tuesday to go over what we call the Tuesday, the top three, the weekly top three. And he comes on to give us that. Today, we're going to talk a bit about the lack of fiscal plan. There is no fiscal plan. Where is it? The thing that's always missing from the K through 12 stories that you hear in the newspaper, and he's got a bone to pick with the Alaska Policy Forum, which hopefully we'll get to here near the end of the morning broadcast. Brad Keithley joins us right now. In fact, he's already in the chat room hanging out with me. Good morning, Brad. How are you doing?
Michael, I'm doing great today. How about you?
You know what? I'm not doing too bad. All right, so let's jump in with, just deep end with both feet. There is no fiscal plan, Brad. Where's the fiscal plan, Brad? Where is it? We're looking for it. Help me. Where's Waldo? Where's it? I'm looking for the guy with the striped shirt and the glasses. Where's Waldo?
Somewhere out there. So let's step back just sort of a half a step to when the governor released his budget last December, and along with the budget, the governor releases the 10-year plan. And the 10-year plan is there to tell us, to inform Alaskans about what the governor sees, what the administration sees going forward, how it's going to balance the budget, what it's going to be spending on, where the revenues are going to come from, how the state is going to proceed. And in the 10-year plan, the governor, the administration showed that there were huge holes in the budget, showing huge deficits, building to $900 million, nearly $1 billion in less than 5 years, and that without additional revenues, there were going to be these huge deficits requiring some form of ad hoc supplemental revenues to deal with the situation. The governor had a plan, though. The plan was we're going to have new revenues from carbon offsets and carbon sequestration. And these new revenues are going to be beginning this year. This is the 10-year plan. I'm not making this stuff up. In the 10-year plan, this year, it was going to be $300 million. Next year, FY25, this coming fiscal year, FY24 was going to be $300 million. The fiscal year after that, $500 million. The fiscal year after that, FY26, $750 million. And then by FY27, within 5 years, we were going to be at $900 million, and we were going to stay at $900 million through the remainder of the 10-year plan. And that's how we're going to plug the hole. That's why we don't need to talk about other new revenues. That's why we don't need to talk about spending cuts. That's why we don't need to talk about anything else, because we've got these revenues that are going to come in and plug the hole. And that was the governor's story in December. Well, fast forward now to the introduction of the bills that are to implement these two types of carbon management, the carbon sequestration and the carbon offsets. And here's what, and when you introduce a bill that has fiscal implications, you have to accompany it with a fiscal note. And the fiscal note talks about both the anticipated costs and the anticipated revenues from the plan. So here is what the governor says about the carbon offset program, about the trees program, using, setting aside forests and trees as a source of carbon offset. Revenue, and this is from the revenue section. Revenues are not specifically estimated because of the market and timeline uncertainty for carbon offset markets. After legislative enactment, the department assumes that program stand-up and initial project solicitations would occur during calendar year 23 and 24. Project development is estimated to begin in calendar year 23 and 24 and 25. It is possible that initial leasing revenues could occur after enactment based on market response, but the size of these revenues is currently indeterminate. Current approximations for voluntary carbon offset projects have a development timeline of at least 18 months before generating credits, and thus the first credits from projects could begin to accrue in calendar year 25, 26, and 27, or 27, based on when they are initiated by market participants. The carbon offset program proposed by legislation could potentially fund future program expenses, and require revenue from the program and require revenue from the program to cover its costs. So remember, $300 million next year, the 10-year plan, $300 million next year. Nothing else going on in the 10-year plan to cover these deficits. $300 million next year, $500 million, $750 million, $900 million by fiscal year 27. None of those numbers appear in this particular part of the budget, in this particular part of the carbon management plan. And revenues are not specifically estimated because of the market and timeline uncertainty. Carbon sequestration, using the reservoirs in the Cook Inlet to inject carbon and sequester it, take it out of the atmosphere, or take it potentially from entering the atmosphere and sequestering it underground. This is what the administration has to say about this. Revenue potential is uncertain at this stage. While the 45Q credit, this is talking about federal legislation, while the 45Q credit will reduce the state's corporate income tax collection because the state tax code adopts by reference the federal tax code, there are numerous fees, penalties, and other charges that will generate the revenue necessary to administer this new program. Additionally, there is potential for the state to monetize carbon injection from other jurisdictions for a fee once the program is underway. For these reasons, and because obtaining a Class 6 primacy from the Environmental Protection Agency will take time, the Department of Revenue cannot say within an acceptable margin of error what the ultimate revenue potential will be at this stage or when. So we've got a 10-year plan that's entirely dependent on this revenue stream to balance. To avoid PFD cuts, to avoid deficits that take additional savings, to avoid all sorts of things. Entirely dependent on these revenues. But when push comes to shove, when revenue has to fess up and talk about what the revenue potential is, it's like, I don't know. Revenues? Are we going to get revenues out of these?
Well, it's like December, they released a fictional bestseller, right? Here it is. Here's what it is. It's going to be great. It's going to be bells and whistles and all this. And then they come down to actually game day, and here's your plan. And it's like, well, it might make money sometime, maybe down the road. It might be. But you said in December, but I know, but it's maybe. It might be. Carbon offset is the new cryptocurrency for the government. Harold is not wrong in this instance. That is true. I mean, that's kind of like the whole deal. How much is it going to be? Nobody knows.
There's this huge disconnect, in all honesty, between the governor who will not mention taxes, who will not mention alternative revenues. Huge disconnect between the governor, who has this pie in the sky story about how we're going to solve everything, and revenue, who's charged with actually on the ground coming up with defensible numbers that they can defend in front of the legislature, and revenue who says wait, you want us to put revenues on numbers on the table? We can't do that, and it's way out in the future, and it's indeterminate, and I don't know. So what the governor is setting up, the fiscal plan that the governor has set up, is PFD cuts. No alternative revenues. No, the reality of these carbon management fees, blown apart by his own revenue department. The only thing that's remaining that the legislature has gone to time after time after time, the only thing remaining is PFD cuts. So the governor who tells us all's well in the world, it's a great day for Alaska. We've got all of these revenues coming in.
Trust me, I got this. Trust me, I got this.
The state has no fiscal plan, Michael, and it's just it is one of the most frustrating things that in my entire time dealing with this that I've come across. In previous budgets, it was, we're going to cut spending. In FY21, we're going to talk about substitute revenues. We're going to talk about new revenues that can substitute for PFD cuts. We had a plan. Now, getting it through the legislature was something else, but at least we had a plan for how we were going to do this. Now we have no plan. We have absolutely no plan. The governor has essentially given up on trying to legitimately, with real numbers, balance the Alaska budget. And he talks about, the 10-year plan has, full statutory PFDs. There's just no way, given what his own revenue department is saying.
He's trying to have his cake and eat it too, right? He puts up this fictionalized bestseller of the new revenues coming in. And then on the other hand, he puts up the $4,000 PFD. Now, I applaud him for the PFD, but you can't have it both ways. He's trying to appease everybody. That's the thing. He's gone from the person that made everybody mad over the whole 2018 budgetary process and the sky is falling and it's the apocalypse, to let me please everybody all the time. You get the $4,000 PFD. We get these fictitious carbon offset credits and tax credits and everything else. I mean, you can't do it. It's impossible. It's got to be one or the other at this point. And we know which way they're going. Like you said, he's just painted a huge target on the PFD to have Alaskans taxed for more of their PFD.
So when you sit here and you go, I want to support the governor, I want to support the governor's fiscal plan, I want to be an advocate for what the hell fiscal plan is there? I mean, what can you be an advocate for? Yeah, it'd be great to have these carbon revenues, but not even the Department of Revenue is willing to sign on for numbers behind those carbon revenues, and without them, all you've got is PFD cuts, and that's not a fiscal plan that works. That's using the mechanism that has the largest adverse impact on the overall Alaska economy and has the largest adverse impact on 80% of Alaska families.
Well, and it's short term. I mean, because it can only happen for so many years before you've consumed it all. And then we're right back to the issue of, we need more revenue. I mean, that's exactly where we're at.
So you can't, there's no fiscal plan to support this time. I mean, there's nothing. He's put nothing out there that's realistic. I mean, as you say, the fictional bestseller, he's put nothing out there that's realistic to support. So FY21, that was a great fiscal plan. It was balanced. It was, we're going to do a little bit of this, a little bit of cuts. It was in the wake of the FY20 debacle. FY21, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of that. The Fiscal Policy Working Group, the legislature's Fiscal Policy Working Group picks up on that same theme. A little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of that. That's something that we can get behind. Yes, we're going to take the PFD down to POMV 50-50, but that's acceptable in the context of an overall compromise. Now we got nothing. Now, when you say the governor's fiscal plan, in all honesty, the governor's fiscal plan is PFD cuts only. No spending cuts, no alternative revenues, PFD cuts only. That is the governor's fiscal plan. And that's 180 degrees distant from where, he started this administration 4 years ago.
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. We're coming up on number 2. Brief synopsis for number 2, Brad.
Can I do brief?
Give me the snapshot here before we
go. The snapshot is James Brooks has been writing a series of articles, and others have been writing a series of articles about K through 12 education, about the need for additional funding, or the efforts for additional funding. But they're leaving out one particular fact that I think is critical for Alaskans to understand, and we're going to talk about what that fact is.
They're leaving out many critical facts. You're going to focus on one of them, I think. Let me amend your statement there, because they are leaving out many critical facts, but one of them for sure. All right, Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. We're going to get more. We're going to be back right after this. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
A new intro there.
Oh, I got some new liners. They are funny as hell. The
Michael Duke Show. Proudly splitting the left versus right dichotomy. Yeah, I had to look that word up too. I don't think it means what he thinks it means.
We had so much fun. All right, Brad. This is this is becoming an exercise in frustration. We've been doing this for a long time, but to cover the same thing, and to point out the fallacies of what people are doing, and then to watch them do it anyway, and then scratch their heads and go, I don't know why we're in this fiscal crisis. I have no idea why we're in this fiscal mess, is just the ultimate of frustration. I mean, I don't know how you feel, but I just feel sometimes I feel like I'm a little worn thin on this, because how many times you have to tell people, don't touch the stove, it's hot, and they lean over on it and put their hand down on it. You know what I mean? That's where we're at these days, it seems like.
Well, the problem, the thing that bothers me, Michael, is there's no leadership now. I mean, as I say, in FY20, we were going to cut. All right, let's cut. That didn't work. FY21, we were going to use a balanced approach. All right, let's use a balanced approach. FY22, FY23, we were going to do POMV 50-50 and cut a little bit. All right, I don't really like this, because we don't have substitute revenues, but okay, at least there's a plan for how we get there. Now we're in FY24, the FY24 10-year plan, and there's nothing. There's nothing. There's these fictional revenues out there that is the plan. And that's just... there's no leadership. I mean, the leadership is, we're going to crash and burn. We're going to take the PFD down. Sorry, but I'm not going to talk about anything else.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make this stuff up. Somebody talked to me over the summer. Somebody buttonholed me over the summer and told me these things are great. Sort of like, somebody once talked to somebody about the LNG project. These numbers are great.
Right.
And we're going to stick those in there for a while. It's just, and the legislature is reacting in a way, you listen to Kathy Giesel talk about it. Well, we're going to take this stuff seriously. We're going to be deliberate about it because it has long-term consequences. Yeah, it has long-term consequences. And yes, you need to be deliberate about it. But since the alternative is PFD cuts, and she doesn't care about PFD cuts, in fact, she kind of likes PFD cuts. They're not going to speed through. They're not going to, give expedited consideration to this proposal, because the alternative is PFD cuts, and they don't care about them. If we had taxes, if we had substitute revenues sitting down there, and this program would back out those taxes, they'd be all over it. It would be, let's get a special committee. Let's focus on this stuff. Let's get it through. But since the only alternative the governor has given them is PFD cuts, the only alternative they have is PFD. They're fine with that. So let's take all the time in the world to go through this program. It's just, there's just no leadership. The governor in the second term, we talked at one point about, was he going to try to be a legacy governor, or was he going to try to leave a legacy, or was he, going to start running for whatever he's running for in 4 to 6 years? This answers it. He's running for whatever he's going to run for in 4 to 6 years.
Yeah.
Tell Alaskans stories, make up fiction and say everything's right with the world when in fact it's not.
Right. Deshana says, we had a special committee. That was the fiscal policy working group, and we had a plan, and it was laid out. And no, it was not going to make everybody happy. In fact, everybody was probably going to be mad about some part of it. But it was a pretty damn good plan overall. And so not surprising that they have now ignored it, because they don't. Again, here's the thing. This has been, in my opinion, Brad, this has always been about avoiding the main issue. And I was talking about this yesterday with Rob Myers. This has always been about avoiding the issue of spending. And Rob makes the point that, what happens if we get new oil revenues? What happens if we do drill for more oil? Well, what happens is they spend all that money too, because we have not addressed the main issue. The boogeyman in the room, the 10 million pound elephant, is the fact that they will spend every dollar that crosses their desk plus some. There's no appetite to quell the spending in the state of Alaska.
Well, and this certainly doesn't put a constraint on that, because they have PFDs. I mean, they can just keep cutting the PFDs. So when the governor talks about we need $900 million in four fiscal years in order to balance the budget, fine, let's take it out of the PFD. I mean, it's just, they have the revenues. The revenues go through their fingers on the way to Alaskan families, just like your stockbroker. The revenues go through his fingers from your investments. The revenues go through his fingers on the way to your family. Except in this case, the state's just got sticky fingers. The state's just hanging on to that money on its way to you. So they've got the revenues. It's just a question of not having substitutes for those revenues, and as a consequence, continuing to take the PFD.
And again, that's a short-term fix. It's a $900 million. Pretty soon, when you reach into the $1 billion territory, there is no PFD, and yet the deficits continue, and they continue to grow. And so that means in the future, we'll be right back here going, well, we need some more taxes because you're not paying your fair share. You haven't paid taxes. That's how it works. Well, good morning and welcome back to the program. The Michael Duke Show continues. Brad Keithley, weekly top 3. We're on to number 2. I don't know if we're going to be able to squeeze all 3 in here, but I really want to. Let's get to number 2, which is the one thing that always gets left out. I mean, story after story, article after article, opinion piece after opinion piece, all on K through 12. And there's so much disingenuousness, falsehoods, outright blatant lies, and even lies of omission in these articles. But Brad is zeroed in on one thing that is missing from every one of them. Brad, what?
Well, you're going to go on about the other thing, so I don't need to worry about them.
I'm going to be quiet about it. I'm going to let you just talk about the one. I want to get to number 3, so go ahead.
Well, the one thing that really always bugs me is they don't talk about the consequences of who pays. Here's what James has got in this particular story I'm looking at. It's a story from a few days ago talking about the education funding bill. And it says, barring an unexpected surge in the price of oil, which would lift state revenue, spending more money on schools would require significant immediate tax increases or spending less money on something else. And the multi-billion-dollar cost of the dividend is by far the largest piece of the budget. Based on the number of, and then skipping down some, based on the number of students enrolled in Alaska's K through 12 schools, a $1,000 per student increase would cost more than $130 million per year. That's roughly equivalent to $205 subtracted from the permanent fund dividend based on the number of recipients in 2022. All right, all of that is fine. He's talking about if you don't have some alternative source of revenue, then it's going to come out of the PFD. And here's the impact on the PFD. The thing that's always missing from this story is who pays, who's bearing the burden of that $205 million of that $205. What's the consequence to Alaska families of that $205? And he misses the point. He excludes the point that the burden falls hardest on middle and lower income Alaska families, and it is the revenue approach that has the largest adverse impact of all of the alternatives. It's the revenue approach that has the largest adverse impact on the overall Alaska economy. It's the basic facts of, yeah, your PFD is going to be less, but in the scheme of things, who's getting hurt by that? What Alaska families are getting hurt by that? What's happening to the economy as a result of that? He's just skipping over it. And it's not like the facts aren't out there. The undisputed facts aren't out there. The 2016 ICER study and the 2017 ITEP study tell you exactly who gets hurt by that, and tell you exactly what the consequences to the Alaska economy is of that, and tell you exactly how that compares to the impact of substitute revenue sources to meet the additional spending requirements, or to meet the shortfall. It's not like the facts aren't out there. The facts are sitting right there. But for some reason, James's stories and other stories, the ADN's guilty of it as well, they never take the next step and talk about who's getting hurt by that. And so, you have middle and lower income Alaska families that are sitting there going, oh, well, I guess we have to pay it. No, you don't. There are alternatives that have a lower impact on you. There are alternatives that spread the burden of that cost more equitably. There are alternatives that have a lower impact on the overall Alaska economy. We talk about the economy and the importance of the economy and the importance of doing things that support the economy. Well, there are alternatives that have a lower adverse impact on the economy and are better for the economy. And there are things that don't have the same consequence to middle and lower income Alaska families. So by excluding that fact, James is not giving Alaska families the full story. He's not enabling them to understand that there are alternatives that would treat them better, treat the overall Alaska economy better. He's just leaving it at the blah. It's it's a $200 per PFD, as opposed to it's $200 per PFD. But if we did this, it would have a lower impact on 80% of Alaska families and be better for the overall Alaska economy. And I'm not suggesting that he editorialized that issue. There are facts in the 2016 ICER and 27 ITEP reports that give him the factual basis to make those statements.
Right. But they keep missing that. Again, it's only $200, and I mean, then everybody pays, and that's how it is. But it does not look at the ratio of impact to the various Alaskans around the state. And again, going back to the one lever that ICER said was not the lever to pull. Please don't pull. They had a big sign on it that says, please don't pull this lever. Please don't. And yet they continued to do so. And that's part of the problem. And yes, there's many other falsehoods and lacks and omissions in this article, but this is just par for the course. This is boilerplate what we're going to see in the news for the rest of this session.
And this is the Kathy Giessel spin. I mean, this is the spin that Natasha von Himhoff and Kathy Giessel want the news to give, right? They want the news to give the spin. Yeah, that everybody just have to pay essentially a head tax, $200, go on. That's how we're going to raise it. As opposed to, hey, this is the worst alternative you could take for covering these additional costs. There are alternatives that would have a lower impact on 80% of Alaska families. There are alternatives that would have a lower impact on the overall Alaska government. And so von Imhoff and Giessel get away with their spin because the news isn't giving the additional facts that provide the context to understand that we're taking the worst alternative, as you said, pulling the lever that ICER said, please don't pull.
Yeah, no, exactly. And this is the advocacy journalism that we're seeing these days. in the state. I mean, quite around everywhere, pretty much, but the state of Alaska especially. There's no balance. I mean, we saw this on the defined benefits article that was out yesterday. 5 people all in favor and why it's all well and good, and one comment from Tom McKay as to why it may not work because of the funding mechanism of it and the cost of it. But I mean, there's no balance in anything that we're talking about. All right. We're going to get to number 3. Boom, right there. You got a bone to pick with the Alaska Policy Forum, which usually is pretty good on a lot of these things. And I'm not as mad as, well, I mean, I don't know if you're mad, but I'm not as, anyway, number 3, go. Opinion piece from Eric Cordero, Georgiana, over there at the Policy Forum.
So Eric's a friend. Eric's been on staff for various legislators for a number of years. He's moved over to the Alaska Policy Forum, and I appreciate and understand and support what he does. But this article's horrible. This article talks about, and we've talked about this report before. This is a report from the Tax Foundation, the DC-based Tax Foundation, that looked at the consequence of the impact of an income tax or a sales tax on Alaska, and talked about all of the adverse impact that would have on Alaska families, and talk about the adverse impact it would have on the Alaska economy. There's nothing in there. The PFD, the problem I have with the report is it doesn't compare it to the PFD. It sort of says, we've got this blank slate. We don't want to have taxes. Here's all the bad things that happen from taxes. It doesn't address the fact that we already have even more bad things happening, because we're using PFD cuts to fund instead. It doesn't compare the impact of the things that they say would be bad from these additional steps. It doesn't compare those to what we're already facing. It doesn't compare it to the actual baseline. It makes up a baseline that says, well, we don't have anything going on right now, so if we have taxes, it would be bad. The correct analysis, the way an economist would look at this, is, what's the baseline we've got right now? The baseline we've got right now is PFD cuts. Right. Taxes would be better than PFD cuts. Taxes still may be bad, but they're a better way of raising revenue. They're better for 80% of Alaska families. They're better for the overall economy than continuing PFD cuts. And so this article goes through all sorts of bad things. Out-migration taxes would worsen out-migration. It would add a grievous. This means that new personal income taxes foisted on Alaskans would add a grievous financial burden to those already struggling to get by. The PFD cuts are doing it all worse. If taxes have an adverse impact on Alaska families, have an adverse impact on out-migration, PFD cuts are having a worse impact on out-migration. If taxes would add to a grievous increase on the financial burden, PFD cuts are even worse for the. And so it's the lack of reference to the baseline that we're already experiencing, and comparing, this step against that baseline that really, sends me off into the stratosphere.
Let me tell you what the headline should read. It shouldn't read, here's what it should. It reads personally. It says personal taxes on Alaskans would be harmful. What it should read is personal taxes on Alaskans would be harmful, and the PFD cut is a tax. That's what it should read. Because the PFD and its whole argument would still be valid, except for now you're saying we're already being taxed at the PFD. It's already happening. I mean, that should be the battle cry.
But what they're trying to do, what Policy Forum is trying to do, is avoid referring to the PFD cut. They're just taking the PFD cut as a given. Essentially, the Policy Forum has moved into the camp of, well, the PFD spending, so don't worry about that. What we don't need are new revenue items. And they're trying to ignore the PFD cuts and say, yeah, taxes are bad. Don't do taxes. Everything else, just leave it the way it is. Don't layer taxes on top. When in fact, substituting taxes for PFD cuts would improve Alaskans' lives, would improve the out-migration we're seeing. If all of this stuff they say about the adverse impact of taxes is true, taxes would be better than continuing down the baseline we have of PFD cuts.
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Thank you, Brad, for coming on board. And
Michael, as always, thanks for having me.
We got more coming up. The Michael Duke Show, Hour 2 dead ahead. Common Sense Radio. Be kind, love one another, live well. Yeah, I mean, I can see definitely your heartburn with this article. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, again, that's the thing. That's the one thing that you and I agree on. They has completely avoided the fact he doesn't want to mention the PFD cuts. He doesn't want to talk about it. They don't want to mention it because it is all the things that he just said could be based into the argument of saying, well, yes, you're right. You're right. You're right. You're right. By the way, the PFD cut is a tax. So all those things you just laid out of how bad they are, they're happening right now. You know, this, I mean, that's a full on argument for getting a spending under control. Changing the tax revenue, that's going to be a hard sell for many people. It still is a hard sell for many people because, again, many of us feel like if they just change it, I mean, yes, the 20% would be more invested, but they're still going to, I mean, there's still such an appetite for spending. They cannot stop themselves.
But Michael, if we don't have substitute tax, this state's not going to adopt spending cuts only, right? We found that out.
Yeah, we tried. I mean, I'm still in favor of it, but find me the people who will pull the lever to say yes.
We tried that in 2019. It failed. So we're going to have some form of new revenues. The question is what form of new revenues we're going to have, and we audit, and that ought to be a question that we focus on. What form of new revenues are we going to have? And there ought to be two big criteria. Three big criteria. What's the impact on Alaska families of each of these revenue sources? What has the least adverse impact on Alaska families? What's the impact on the overall economy of the various revenue sources? Let's find the one that has the least adverse impact on the overall Alaska economy. And what's the revenue source that creates the greatest incentive for getting spending under control? We ought to find the revenue source that has the greatest potential for getting spending under control. And the various revenue sources have different impacts, as we've talked about, different impacts on creating incentives for spending, for getting impacts on getting spending under control. That ought to be the discussion we have. What this article is doing is assuming we've baked in PFD cuts, right? Don't worry, we've locked in PFD cuts. Let's not have any other form of revenue other than PFD cuts. Let's continue to use PFD cuts because they're not arguing. This article doesn't argue. Let's do spending cuts only and have no revenues on top of and have no new revenues. All it's saying is let's not have these type of new revenues, leaving PFD cuts as the only source of revenues. And so what this article is really saying is let's continue to use the revenue source that has the largest adverse impact on 80% of Alaska families, has the largest adverse impact on the overall Alaska economy, and has the least impact on getting spending under control because you leave the top 20% entirely out of it. And that's so if you're going to write an article about revenue sources and leave out and say, oh, these revenue sources are bad, and leave out the revenue source we're using that is worse than those, it's not an article that's useful. It's not an article that's fair in addressing the current Alaska situation.
Powered and sponsored. I have the same problems, Brad, that I agree. If we're going to have a conversation, we need to address and talk about the best revenue source, the best taxation possible. But again, I am still not convinced, and I think many people are not convinced, that once we have another revenue, they won't still continue to cut the PFD. Where's the guarantee? I mean, that's the problem and I agree with you. I mean, I think a flat tax is the best of all tax options. I think that if we're going to look at revenue sources, that's probably where we need to be because it hits everybody equally. But again, what is the stumbling block for them to not say, oh, well, we could do that. And then we can offset some of those taxes with a PFD cut. And so it doesn't hit so instead of a 2% or a 3% flat tax, it'll be a 1.5% flat tax and we'll take the rest from the PFD. So that
would still be better off. We'd still be better off with that, by the way. I mean, a flat tax for any portion of the PFD replaced by a flat tax or any other form of taxation is better for Alaskans than strictly using PFD cuts. But Michael, the answer to that question is the spending cap, right? I mean, it's the answer that the administration came to in the FY21 10-year plan. It's the answer that the legislative working group, fiscal policy working group came to, 2 years ago. It's include a spending cap as part of the overall picture. Now you can't You can't just do a spending cap and still leave the PFD out there, the PFD cuts out there dangling. That doesn't work. But, as part of an overall plan to add in that additional guarantee, then you add on a spending cap, and that locks in the guarantee that you're looking for.
Well, again, lots of moving parts. Again, my major fear is they do everything except for put the spending cap in. And then, right? I mean, you can't admit that that's not a possibility, that they could do that and then put in either don't put in a spending cap, or they put in a spending cap that's so ineffectual it's basically useless.
So we've seen the solution. The solution then is continued PFD cuts. I mean, you argue your way out of everything else, and where does that leave us? That leaves us with continued PFD cuts from now until the end of time. And that's a solution. Again, that's a solution that has the largest adverse impact on 80% of Alaska families and on the overall economy.
Right. Well, I mean, again, all the options are bad. Would you like the poop sandwich or the diarrhea milkshake? I would like neither. That's the problem. But I can't find anybody to support my idea of cutting the state government down to a sustainable level. So, I mean,
so no alternative revenues. We'll just keep using We'll make up these fictional revenues.
I'm with you, Brad. Don't get me wrong. I'm with you. We have to address this in some way. But again, we have to be prepared for what could possibly come down the road. And I think, again, possibly this could, we have to just be ready for any eventuality in that case.
I don't disagree, Michael, that we have to take it into account. I don't disagree that we have to structure it in a way to make sure that doesn't happen. I don't disagree that we have to have a spending cap that works along with everything else. That's fine. But to continue to say we can't talk about alternative revenues because, oh my God, this might happen. Where that leaves us is continued PFD cuts year after year after year.
I agree.
After year.
I do agree with that. I got to go
on the absolute work.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its hole. Gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across
the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the state of Alaska on this your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Boy, Brad's still in the green room, so maybe I should bring him back just because we were arguing here during the commercial break over it, and I don't know if it was an argument that we were actually arguing with each other or at cross points. I'm going to bring Brad back on actually, just because I think this is interesting. Because no, I mean, you're not wrong. This is the thing. So for just to set up some context, I was talking to Brad about the problem of, what if we get a flat tax, which is the best form. I think we've all agreed. Well, maybe not you, not everybody, but Brad and I have agreed that if you must have the gun pointed at your head, it must be the smallest caliber gun possible. And that's what we're looking at. The flat tax is a good tax. But I said, what is to say they don't get the flat tax and then they're like, oh, look, we got a flat tax. Oh, and we could still take the PFD as well because that's still more money in the room. And Brad's like, well, then we do nothing. And then what good is that if we've done nothing? But and I'm not disagreeing with you. We should not continue to have a cuts only or a PFD tax only approach. I think we should have a cuts only approach, but we don't have anybody else that thinks the same thing that we do. So Brad and I were just arguing about it. Brad, I agree with you. Of all the taxes, the flat tax is the good one. But I think we just have to be prepared that if we do go down that road, they are going. I mean, you say, well, they have to have a spending cap. Well, but that's assuming that they'll do both. This legislature can't chew gum and tie their shoes at the same time. They want to work at one little thing at a time. They don't want to pass an overall holistic approach of a spending cap and spending cuts and taxes and everything else all at once. They want to take just one bite at a time. And if we get a tax without a spending cap, we're in trouble.
Okay, so we just keep PFD cuts. I mean, that's yeah. We're not going to try something else. We'll just keep doing PFD cuts, and we'll just keep going down the keep going down the hole.
I'm not an absolutist. I'm not saying that we have to. I'm just saying we should be prepared and maybe have a plan. I guess is what I'm saying, right? I mean, I guess that's what I'm saying is we got to be prepared because past performance is indicative of future results. They have sucked up every available dollar in every room of the House for years. And to think that we'll throw more money in there and they're not going to do it, we have to have a plan to counteract that.
And the Fiscal Policy Working Group had a plan, Michael. The Fiscal Policy Working Group had a plan that was part spending cuts, part PFD restructuring that resulted in PFD cuts, and part new revenues capped off by a spending cap. They have a plan. And for it was frustrating to me, I guess, what the frustration that's coming out here is to say, well, we can't really talk about the new revenue part of the plan because people just get upset about that. Well, okay, fine. Then that means PFD cuts because we are not going to have spending cuts only. I mean, as much as some people might want it, as much as you and I might want it, we're not going to have spending cuts only. There will be revenues. And if we don't have alternative revenues, they're going to continue to be PFD cuts. So we do have a plan. It's the Fiscal Policy Working Group plan. Let's target that. And let's talk about what the best piece of the best new revenue piece of it is. But, to say we can't talk about new revenues is just.
Oh, well, and I agree with that. I mean, you have to discuss everything, even things that you find unpalatable. I mean, right? I mean, unpalatable. I mean, nobody really wants to talk about it. But if you're looking at the train coming down the track and you're about to get run over, you do have to discuss the best way to get off the track. I mean, whether, even if it's a bridge and there's water on both sides, you still got to talk about the uncomfortable things that we need to talk about. I'm definitely not saying that. I, again, am still a fan of the cuts only approach. I agree with what Chris says. Plenty of people think that cuts only is the best solution. Only the special interests collectively disagree, which is true. But the problem is the special interests have got their hand firmly on the wheel. We can't, yes, I've been crying about cutting the government for 22 years on this radio program, and nobody's listening. I mean, that's just what it is, right? I mean, Brad,
Chris is listening. We tried that in 2019. I mean, what happened? The governor almost got recalled. It took COVID essentially to prevent the governor from going through a recall situation. So, we've tried that. It didn't work. It's not going to work. We've tried electing new legislators. It keeps getting worse instead of better. It's time to face up to the fact we're not going to get spending cuts only. If we ever get spending cuts only, it's because the top 20% will finally, the donor class, the lobbyist class will finally get engaged to push back on spending. We're not going to get spending cuts only, just with the PFD sitting out there as the alternative revenue source. So, if we're not going to talk about alternative revenues, we're not going to talk about substitutes for PFD cuts as part of an overall plan. Part of an overall plan. Let me add that phrase. Maybe that'll help. If we're not going to talk about substitute revenues as part of an overall plan, then we're just done. I mean, we're done. You and I are going to be bitching about PFD cut. Can I say that? Anyway, you and I are going to be complaining about PFD cuts all the way to the end of my life, certainly, and beyond that. So we either talk about something that's a realistic, better way. Right. To deal with Alaska's fiscal situation, or we just accept that we're going to have the worst and keep on going down that road and saying, well, we tried, didn't work. Yeah, too bad.
Yeah. Well, and we did try cuts. I mean, Chris says that we did not try cuts. We did try cuts. Now, Dunleavy did fold like a house of cards. I mean, he rolled over and went on himself fast. There was a recall. It was, again, a full court press from the fifth estate, about sky is falling and dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria and all that kind of stuff. but we did try it, and there was such a huge pushback from the special interest, they garnered the day. I think anybody is terrified to talk about the cuts-only approach now.
Dunleavy couldn't even get 16 when push came to shove. At the end of the day, Dunleavy couldn't even get 16 to back him up for the level of cuts he proposed, for the level of cuts it would take to have a spending cuts only. There, you look at even that legislature had 16 conservatives, 20 conservatives in it. He couldn't get 16 of them to back him up on the level of cuts he was proposing. Everybody was going, yeah, cut everything else except my deal.
Right.
And by the time you have, the 20 or 25 legislators all say, or the 16 legislators all saying that, cut everything except my deal, there wasn't 16 there to back up the level of cuts he needed.
Yeah. Well, I think, we, again, articulating the plan and going back to the fiscal policy working group, I think it is a plan. I think it's a workable plan. The House majority has said they're going to use that as a roadmap to go forward and do that. But we do have to have, we're going to continue to talk about other tax revenues. We're going to do it on this program. We're going to talk about it. I may not like it. I may not be happy about it. I may be fearful of what happens when you give them more revenue. But if we don't at least discuss it, then what's going to happen? They're going to continue to take the PFD. And what will happen in 5 years? There will be no PFD left because they will have consumed it all and they will have grown the size of government to continue to consume it every year, and it will be gone. It will be a non-entity. And then as it continues to grow, well, then they'll start talking about taxes again. And because we refuse to discuss the best option and the way to do it, we're going to get steamrolled yet again. So while I disagree with Brad in the one aspect, I agree on the other, because if we had a plan and a plan that could do it, and we had the people to be able to put it through, like a spending cap and some of these other pieces and a holistic approach, we could do that. Right? We could take another crack at this with other revenues and at least see what happens. See what happens.
That's what the fiscal policy working group did. They sat down. You had everybody from Ben Carpenter to Jonathan Christ Tompkins on the committee, Jesse Keel on the committee. You had conservatives and the right of the legislature, the left of the legislature, and they agreed on this plan that included some alternative revenues to replace PFD cuts. The governor's FY21 10-year plan had that same approach. A little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of something else, so that no one entity takes the hit. And that's what we're gonna need to do. So yeah, you and I can argue about this, but in the context of an overall plan, let's just take the fiscal policy working group plan as a given. In that context, in the context of an overall plan, we're going to need alternative revenues as part of that. If we don't have alternative or substitute revenues as part of that, it's going to be PFD cuts. That's the problem with the spending cap. You can set a spending cap, but if you don't solve the PFD situation, what's going to happen is you're just going to take, PFD cuts all the way up to the spending cap. And the things that are outside the spending cap, like the capital budget and other things, they'll take the PFD for that too, because they won't have any substitute revenues. So substitute revenues have to be part of any plan, and to pick on them and say we're not going to do substitute revenues, then we're just saying, okay, PFD cuts all the way down to the end.
Well, and I agree with that. I would agree that you have to discuss substitute revenues. And from a personal standpoint, if I could wave a magic wand today and say, put into place, we have to have the same revenues and everything else, but put into place. If I waved a magic wand and had a 3% flat tax today, my family, we would be well ahead with a 3% flat tax versus a PFD cut, because they're taking a good 8, 9, 10% of our overall income based on just taking the dividends, right? So a 3% flat tax would be great for my family. But again, my fear is they take the 3% and yet they still carve into the other. So,
all right. So it's got to be in the context of the overall plan that includes a spending cap.
Exactly. It's got to be. That's the thing. We've got to find that holistic. I don't know.
And so back to where we were in segment 3. Here's the problem with the Alaska Policy Forum piece. It doesn't talk about alternative revenues in that context. It just says alternative
Right.
revenues are bad. We can't have those because they'd have a bad impact on the economy. What they don't say is, in the context of an overall solution, they'd actually have a positive impact on the economy because they take away the worst alternative. They take away some of the worst alternative, which is PFD cuts. So it's a misleading piece. It's a misleading argument that the policy forum is putting out there by just focusing on that particular piece and saying that's bad. We can't do that. We have to do that as part of the overall plan.
I agree with that. I agree. All right. Well, thanks for sticking over and arguing with me because that was fun. But I mean, again, even though I disagree with the principle of taxes in general, I mean, I think that's just a generalized taxation is theft, and I agree. But we're already being taxed, so we have to discuss all the options that are on the table. As distasteful as that may be, and as much as that may rankle your libertarian / conservative / Republican feathers, we still have to talk about it, the pros and cons, at least have a discussion about it. But we're going to have to see. I mean, at this point am doubting whether there's the political will to even take up the fiscal policy working group plan. There may be in the House majority, but now you've got the minority plus the Senate and everything else. It's going to be very difficult. It's going to be very, very
plus
difficult.
The governor. I mean, the governor's often is, fantasy world of these carbon management revenues solving the entire problem. So the governor's got to re-engage.
Well, it's an interesting conversation, if nothing else, and one that I think we will continue to have. So, Brad, thank you so much for coming on board this morning and joining us. Folks, we got to go. Chris Story's up next, The Michael Duke Show. We need the positivity now because, we're going to be back with more of The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes on Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, in the chat room, in the break and the chat room, we do have one line on hold, but let me get caught up here real quick. Harold says, I sure miss Dan Fagan. Well, why don't you go listen to Dan Fagan? Because all the nonsense that you spew all the time is, well, I know now why a lot of people block you. Blaming Kevin for saying Kevin supports my position simply because I used a soundbite is the baseline of false logic. You are the poster child for false logic, I guess, in that regard. But hey, I'm sure Dan Fagan's streaming somewhere. Feel free to go ahead and listen to him if you'd like. You don't have to be here. Nobody's twisting your arm. Unless somebody is twisting your arm, in which case that is the best form of torture, is to listen to something that you completely disagree with. I love it. I love it. I'm happy to be your torturer for today. Yes. Defined benefits testimony today. Don't forget to call in 9 a.m. to the Alaska Senate Finance Committee. Tell them hell no. And there's all the stuff. No bankrupting our state. Wednesday at 3 p.m. they'll take testimony for the state budget. All right. So there you go, Bert. I don't know what the number is, but you'll have to go find it. Do your homework. At least Dan was consistent. Oh, man, Harold is begging to get blocked today, aren't you? You're just begging to do it. Go ahead. Feel free. Feel free to spin that dial, brother. Spin it hard. If you don't like it, that's right. Nobody else does anyway, so it's fine. It's okay. Oh, man. Let me go back to some of the other. Grow the private economy, says Donna Ardwin. Yes, I'm all about that. I mean, that's why I'm having such a hard time with this whole concept. And again, Chris is just emulating my fears here. Or get a 3% flat tax. They continue to tax the PFD anyway. I mean, that's exactly the problem. Going back up here. Okay. I think we're back to the end of the last segment here. Okay. That's it. A lot. Okay. Look at that. Chris Story is ready to join us. Before we join, Chris is on the line right now. I do have to go over to this call real quick because they've been on hold for a bit. Hold the line for just a sec. Chris, good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from? Hello, caller. Are you there? Oh, I'm sorry, caller. I had you muted over here.
I just got to say, you never hear a politician worried about, let's see, taxation without representation would be one of them. And, if they stick to that, probably a lot of that pork and all of those lobbyists and all of those people that are causing all this problem would not be involved, but they don't. And, the whole deal is government was created in the first place to take care of the public. And all they do is take care of themselves now. They're greedy. And there's an old saying, he who holds the money is the winner. And once they start holding your money, they're the winner. They're the only ones that are going to win. You're going to lose your PFD. You're exactly right. You're going to go bankrupt, and they'll do it until you just have nothing left. And it's a sad thing in government these days. They just don't seem to care. They don't, they're sitting on millions of acres of land, which I've said all along, we want people to pay taxes on it. Make it so people can have land and start businesses and invest the money back into the people, type of deal. But they don't do that. They invest it in out-of-state people, and we've got people coming into Alaska with out-of-state money to get people elected with ranked choice cheating and stuff like that.
Right.
It's just amazing if you look at the whole ball of
Jeff,
Jeff,
I'm going to ask you
to crazy deal.
Jeff, I'm going to ask you to hold on.
But
Jeff, I'm going to ask you to hold on and call back at the end of the hour because I'm out of time. I got to go. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. All right, welcome back to the program. Thanks for continuing with us today. Chris Story is about to join us, the man from Homer. He comes in to give us our weekly dose of positivity. Let's jump over there right now and see what he has to say. We haven't got a chance to say hi to him yet this morning. Good morning, sir. How are you doing?
Good morning, Michael. On top of the world, right where I belong.
Right where you belong. Well, that's good to know. It's all. Hey, what's happening? What's your I could join. You can join me here. Yes, I could join you there.
I didn't say it like that.
Yeah.
I didn't say it like I was whispering it into your ear.
You're
welcome here.
He's like, you could join me here. We have cookies. All right. Mr. Story, what's on your mind today, brother? What is your topic for today's dose of positivity and life coaching? Where are we sitting?
I woke up this morning thinking, how can I make your life better? And I thought the answer just came to me quickly. I know what everyone wants, not what 50%, 30%, 40%, 80% of the people want. I know what everyone wants. And that's a pretty big deal. If you know what everybody wants,
right? Hello,
you can't miss.
Right. You're omnipotent at that point, right? I mean, you're omnipotent and omnipotent. So tell us, Mr. Impotent, what is what does everybody want? Give us the secret. The secret.
Art Williams actually said it. He started, so Art Williams was a football coach and went from successfully coaching football teams to running a business. And he ran an insurance business. He started in 1977, and he made his goal to beat Prudential, which was huge. They were the major global company in life insurance at the time in 1977. So Art Williams took them on, and he had a motto, and that was this: everyone wants to be someone. And I think that's what everyone wants. Everyone. I don't think that's hyperbole either. I think it's actually very, very true. You have people in your chat room that desperately, by referencing other talk show hosts, want to matter. He wants to be someone.
Right.
And that's okay. That's his prerogative, because that's what everybody wants. Everyone wants to be someone. And so there are three things that I think everyone actually secretly wants or openly wants. And Art outlined them beautifully. Don't even have to reinvent the wheel. So do you want to know what the three things are that Art Williams said
I
everyone
do
wants?
want to know what the three things are that everyone wants. And I would agree that, again, to be somebody, to make a difference, I guess, to be recognized. I think that's pretty universal.
Yes, agreed. Some people call it mattering. Everyone wants to matter. Everybody wants to be someone, is how Art put it. And I like that. So, okay, the founder of A.L. Williams, one of the largest private insurance companies ever to have been formed by an individual and knocked out all of his major competitors, he said, you want these three things. Number one, you want to be your own boss. You want to be your own boss, owning your own time, schedule, the choices of your day, the choices of what you do, where you do it, and how and who you do it with. That is fundamental to all human beings. I had a job when I was 19, and I remember 19 through 21, I guess. I've been self-employed since I was 21. And so to this day, I feel like I'm unemployable. However, I remember feeling on the job like I was my own boss. That's what got me through an 8-hour or 12-hour day, was feeling like, oh, I'm in partnership with this company. I'm running my own business here.
Right.
And in my mind, I brought that to the job. And I think that's something that each of us can do, no matter what you're doing or who you're working for. If you treat it like you're self-employed, you're an entrepreneur, and you show up here by choice, it can make all the difference in not just perception, but actually maybe even how you show up, to a point where other opportunities and doors open for you by being literally your own boss, even on the job working for that guy.
So everybody wants to be their own boss. That's number one.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because again, I came from a family of entrepreneurs. I always wanted that, even as why I always had some kind of side hustle, even while I was working a full-time job, because I wanted, at least in some aspect of my life, to be my own boss in that. I think that's why side hustles are such a big thing, especially in America, because it is the land of entrepreneurship and opportunity, and that's what people aspire for.
Exactly. And you get a taste of it, even if it's, as Jim Rohn had admonished, work full-time on your job and part-time on your future fortune. So that part-time future fortune could be invested in real estate. It could be starting some other enterprise. It could be your own radio talk show out of New Orleans, whatever. You can work on the side. You can do part-time future fortune work, even while you're working full-time for that guy. And I submit to you, you'll show up better in your job if you're fulfilled in either recognizing your own boss, and or you've got something on the side where you actually are your own boss. So I agree with you 100%. And I grew up the same way. A.L. Williams paid their people in the form of partnerships. You were not employed per se as much as you were a partner with a company. They recognized it, tapped into the fact that everybody wants to be their own boss. They compensated people that way, and they got people show up 200%. And that's how the company exploded and just grew into a $1 billion company.
Right.
Second thing that Art Williams said everybody wants is to work at something you love. To work at something you love. And this crosses into that whole purpose conversation or passion conversation. But I agree 100% that you can put the love into what you're doing currently, even if you didn't consider this to be your childhood dream avocation. Fine. Show up and put the love in, and you'll eventually get more in cash value than you're putting out in use value to your employer, or other opportunities will show up. But I agreed with Art 100% on this. We all want to work at something we love. This is why most people, when they've changed jobs, or left one employer for another rarely cite money. It's rarely about the money. It's almost always about the culture. It's almost always about the finding work that matters, finding something to do that I love, even if it's a bit of a pay cut or a lateral financial move. Finding something you love is just absolutely and aspirationally important to almost everybody.
Right. No. Okay. So doing something you love, being your own boss. What's number 3?
Build for yourself financial independence, becoming financially independent. That's the American dream. That's at the essence of one of the planks of the American dream. I think it's a multi-planked floor, but we'll just say that this is, in essence, the American dream, building yourself a financial independence such that you have choices. You have choices over your time. You have choices over your travel. You have choices over your health and your health care. You have choices in this world as a result of financial independence. And you get to determine what that is. To Warren Buffett, that's $88 billion. To somebody else, it could be $1 million portfolio in real estate. For somebody else, it could be $50,000 cash in the bank, a nice mutual fund growing at a consistent 5 to 8% per year, and some sort of a pension plan. Whatever it is, you get to define for yourself what that financial independence looks like. But it's something we all want.
I think that's the interesting part because, you listen to a lot of self-help gurus like Chris Story and others, and you listen to them and people always, it's always some kind of get rich thing or do this, the other thing. And I think people misunderstand because I think you're right. I mean, financial independence is the key phrase there. It doesn't mean that I have to be a gazillionaire. It could mean that I just have an income of $80,000 to $100,000 coming in every year, that I now have more free time to do the projects that I want or the things that I want to do. If you ask, what was financial independence for me, I'd be like, well, if I was making $100,000 a year passively off something that I've done or businesses or things like that, I would be pretty comfortable. I would still be working. I would still be doing other things. But if I knew that no matter what else, if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, that I've got $100,000 a year coming in, then, I would consider that to be financially independent. If I had a portfolio, if I had all those things, I think people get stuck on the whole idea of, not everybody can be millionaires. Well, I'm not saying be a millionaire. I'm saying if you're making a significant, amount of your income in a passive way or something that you've built that's spending it on, I think you're 110% right on that. Financial independence is the one thing that I think people yearn for because there's only so much time. And if you didn't have to do the things that don't bring you joy, if you didn't have to do the things that were a slog that sucked up all your time during the day, your days would slow down. It wouldn't be a fast week because you'd be doing the things that you wanted to do and you'd be comfortable and confident because you have whatever the income level it is that you want, whether it's $100,000 a day or if it's $100,000 a year, you'd be comfortable doing it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Money is so relative. The amount of money that equates that financial independence is a very relative term. And I agree with you that a lot of gurus and self-appointed gurus and advisors have certain metrics by which they measure your success for you or have you measure it, when in fact, it's personal. It's deeply personal. And that's why for years, I've always promoted this idea of personal return on investment. Instead of just ROI, make sure that you add the P and that you're understanding your personal return on investment. What is it that you wish to achieve? Speaking of Jim Rohn, he said, how do you go broke? Now, mind you, this was in 1984. How do you go broke making $10,000 a month? Spend 11. So, how can you get rich making $10,000 a month?
Right.
By spending 4? It's all relative. What if, so recapping, being your own boss, working at something you love and building for yourself financial independence. If you could combine those 3 things into one philosophy that allows you to show up in your life where you say, I'm here by choice, doing what it is I want to do, that's wealth in my book. Speaking of my book, The Backyard Millionaire, do you remember in the end, spoiler alert, in the end, the main character made a choice much different from his mentors, and his choice was to own 4 homes. His mentor owned thousands of units. he made a choice and said, look, for me, my definition is to own these 4 homes, which is the very definition of becoming a backyard millionaire. If you own 4 homes, by definition, you have a net worth of $1 million at some point. So the point is, it's personal, it's selective, and you get to be your own boss in choosing what you want to aim at for your financial independence.
Okay.
I say go for broke and see what happens.
So break it down Barney style for me here. How do I implement these 3 things? How do I apply these 3 things? Be your own boss, do something you love, and achieve financial independence. How do I implement that in my life quickly here?
If you're not already running your own business, go get a business license instantly. Go get a business license. I don't care what it is or what you call it, and instantly you'll become a business person. Even if you're an employee, move yourself in your mind from employee to business owner today, and then order business cards with your name and contact information, your business name, and instantly you're in business. If you do not open a business, you do not have a business of your own, it's hard to see yourself as your own boss and self-employed. So I say go start a business today. I don't care what you're doing or how you're doing it or how much time you dedicate to it. Instantly shift your mind and attitude from employee to business owner. Do it today, and then shift from business owner into investor, and so on, all the way through the gamut, all the way down to you built your own financial independence and freedom. But it starts with your attitude.
Right.
And so one of the best and easiest and fastest ways is spend a couple $100 with the state of Alaska. That'll make Brad happy. That's revenue for the state. And now you're helping yourself, but you're also helping the world, because you're about to become financially independent if you aren't. And if you already are, then I say challenge yourself to grow a little bit further or help some other people reach down the ladder. If you're listening to this going, man, I'm so financially independent. Wonderful. Reach down the ladder and help somebody else up. So those 80% Brad consistently talks about and defends every single Tuesday, that 80%, let's build up from the bottom to a point where taking a couple $100 out of their dividend, not a problem. Become a business owner today and work at something you love, even if it's part-time, and build yourself your own financial independence.
And hey, newsflash, that first step is even easier than you expected. I went to renew my business license last week, and the state wouldn't take my money. They've got some kind of federal COVID grant, so you can basically get a business license for free. I mean, I tried
literally going broke as a state.
I know. I tried to give them my money, and they were like, "Nope." I'm like, "But where's that?" Nope, it's $0. Have a nice day. Here's your license. I'm like, "Yeah, you want to go start a business license? Now's the time to do it, baby. Right now." Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So, got it.
But I agree. Take that first step, and even if it's just building widgets for Etsy or for yard sales or for craft shows or whatever you're doing, go get a business license and start putting that mindset to work. It is, I mean, the more that I put that mindset to work in my life 25, 30 years ago, the more I started to think along those things. And it took me a while to actually get to a full-blown, full-on corporate blah, blah, blah. But the whole time I was thinking about it, and I was working it, and I was trying to be the proper business owner. And that kind of achievement, man, it gives you some fulfillment. It is the best thing ever. So Chris's book is called The Backyard Millionaire. He also has a new show coming out and some other things that I got a chance to sneak peek. Sounds really good, by the way. And you could find out about everything that he does at ilovehomeralaska.com. And you can go over there and you can pick up a copy of The Backyard Millionaire. If you can go to Amazon, you can go to Audible and get the audiobook version of it, and just enjoy yourself. Chris Story, thank you, my friend. I appreciate you being here today.
My pleasure. Great thrill. Thank you, Michael.
All right. Hold on a second. The Michael Duke Show continues. We got more coming up. Don't go anywhere. We're going to open up the phone lines up next. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. We'll be back right after this.
Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, in the break right now, Chris, I mean, I did have to laugh because here we are in a crisis in this state and everything else, and I literally tried to give them money when I renewed my business license, and I'm like, Where's my credit card? I got to put this stuff in.
I think, isn't it federal COVID dollars?
I think it's federal COVID dollars. Yeah. I mean, it's still
that's what I heard. Which 6-7 trillion bucks, and you can see. Yeah. Anyway, but I want to share a quick story. Do you mind if I share?
No, absolutely. Go ahead.
You mentioned craft fairs, and it prompted and just ignited in my mind a memory of when I was a full-time potter traveling all over the state selling pottery at all the different craft shows. And this is what I did for a living. This is what we did financially. It was 100% of our income. But there were people at the Sullivan Arena and the Egan Center and the high schools, the auditoriums where all these shows were going on. I knew one family in particular that I love their story, and I told it many times. They were both school teachers, and they, as a family, every evening and weekend would sit around cutting out pieces of plastic that you melt in the oven and making little pieces of jewelry, pendants, and little small earrings and little pieces of jewelry in puffin shapes or bears or all very Alaskan type things. And they would melt them. They were really quite beautiful. But it's that very simplistic, childlike cutting with scissors and stacking these little pieces of plastic, baking them in your oven at 125 degrees or whatever. You know the stuff you did it as a kid. But they took it to another level. It was really quite beautiful.
The shrinkies. They were called shrinkies.
Yeah,
right? Shrinkies. Yeah,
I think you're right. And then they would put the little clips on the back, and they made, every time we do a show together, I would watch and I would observe their sales. They were making $3,000 to $4,000 a weekend on the side, and that's huge. That's a big deal. And what they gave up was just some television time. Oh no, they didn't, because they had the TV on while they were working as a family around the dinner table, actually converted into a widget factory, making all this extra money. And so I always think back to that and go, wow, here they are, their own boss. They were doing something they loved in school teaching, but also they did this. They loved their artwork, and they turned it into a business and built financial independence, irrespective of whether or not the union was able to get them a monetary raise that next year or not. They'd already made their own raise, and they were making their own way in the world on the side. I love that story. That family was just wonderful.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that could be something as simple as that. Find a need and fill a need, and there is a way to do it. And build that little empire up to something big, or just keep it small if you want. If you're happy just doing that, and you're putting away, if you're doing 20 weekends a year and you're putting away $3,000 a weekend, that's a nice little nest egg that you can put away every year and make sure, that comes back to that financial independence and that freedom of, if the car breaks, you don't have an intellectual meltdown because you don't have the money to fix it. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Precisely. Yep. I agree 100%. Yeah. So thanks for letting me share that. It's a story that inspires me. And I think in terms of when I'm doing projects on the side, I think about that family. I think, yes, they're what a guiding light. What a great example.
Yeah. Well, I agree. And I appreciate you coming on board. I think it's inspirational, the things that you talk about. And I mean, I appreciate it because it reminds me of that backstory. And I think this story today of everybody wants to matter. Everybody wants to be their own boss. Working at something you love, even if you don't love it, find something to love about it, take ownership of it. Mm-hmm. And then that financial independence, I think that is the super important. And
I agree. And then how about offering Harold a segment?
Yeah. Well, the phone lines are always open. He can always call in.
Ever call in?
We had him. We interviewed him one time when he was running for office. We interviewed him one time.
Okay.
But
he's just pulling your pigtails, Michael. Just think about that. That's all he's doing is pulling your pigtails.
It's the Molotov cocktail into the crowd. That's what it is. So something like that.
Yeah, Fagan. That was classic.
Yeah, because Fagan was so good, so good. All right. Thank you. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it. It's good to talk with you. We'll talk to you again soon.
Catch you later.
Bye. All right. Chris Story, the man from Homer, our guest today here on the Michael Duke Show. We appreciate him coming on board and being part of it with us today. We like that. It's good stuff. All right. Here we are. We're getting ready to jump in. We're going to fire the phone lines up. Oh my God, Jeff is still there. I didn't realize it. I just looked up and saw Jeff is still in the chat room. He was dedicated to have something to say today. So we're going to talk about that. Phone lines are open. You can always call in. 907-433-3150. 907-433-3150. We would love to hear what you have to say. Feel free to be part of it today. And man, I love that. That stuff with Chris just reminds me of things that I need to keep my focus on. And I love that. Okay. All right. Y'all ready to do this thing? Let's get things going on here and jump back into it. The Michael Duke Show. Ding. Let's get it done, shall we? Here we go. Welcome back to the program, The Michael Duke Show, broadcasting across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. This hour of the program brought to you by your friends at Satellite West. You'll find them at satellitewest.com. From Chicknick to Chickaloon, from chicken to, I can't think of another CH, Kaktovik. Not the same, but you know what I mean. It doesn't matter where you go. They can keep you in contact, whether it's via telephone or text message or email or just surfing the internet, whatever it is. Satellite West has got you covered. Proud sponsors of the show today. Go check them out at satellitewest.com. Satellitewest.com. All right, let's continue on here. We have Jeff. I asked him to actually hold, and he did. He held on the line here. We were trying to get him on before the break and before Chris, but Jeff is over in Homer. Let's see what he has to say. Although he may not be in Homer, he is from Homer, and he's down there right now. Hey, Jeff, what's on your mind today?
Well, I just listened to you and Chris. That was great. Thanks for leaving me on there. I was glad because I can't listen to the show where I am unless I'm on my phone.
Oh, okay.
And you guys were talking about being dedicated and him working, these people working for themselves, want to work for themselves. I have worked for myself all my life as a guide, carpenter, whatever I've done. I've worked for myself. And, you talk about ambition and all of that. That's what it takes. It takes, if people want to get out of that rut, you got to get out of working for somebody else because that's all it's ever going to be. And, listening to that was a great thing to hear. More people should try to do that. More entrepreneurs, they make more money, they pay more taxes, and whatnot. But, and then you and I were talking earlier about the state problem and the federal problem and all those problems. But, yeah, I think it's great to get out there. If you find something you love to do, as a guide for many years, I never worked a day.
Right.
I got to meet a lot of good people. This last weekend, I took my oldest boy's stepson out. He'd never caught a fish through the ice. He caught a fish through the ice. He's hooked for life now. That's things that I've always done. And you can be proud of those things because we made a fisherman out of that young. And I say better to fish than take drugs. So, we have always worked hard. My kids do, and I taught them that. I taught them skills. You cannot live on one skill. Some can, okay? You're a lucky one. You've got the skill on the radio. You've been there. That's a great thing. But I'm sure you got other skills,
Sure.
through life. And you can't. I meet people, used to guide them all the time, had one skill, worked at the belt factory, Delco Belt. When it went overseas, they had no idea what to do. Lost. So, the best thing you can do as a worker or working for yourself is to have every skill you can find and learn it. Learn that skill. Don't pass it up. If you've got a chance to learn something, learn it. And if you're not learning, time to die. I always said, I learn every day. So,
right.
I think what Chris was saying, and you were saying is a very good thing. Just it would be really nice if we could teach our government that.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's for sure. No, that's 100% for sure. If we could teach the government, that would be great. And you're right. Everybody has to have multiple skills. I mean, you got to have a multiple. Yes, I'm good at being on the radio. I'm also good at voice acting. I'm also good at selling. I'm also good at, fill in the blank, whatever it is. You've got to have, people should always have a plan B. Right? I mean, people should always have some kind of plan B just in case plan A goes gunny sack. You got to know exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, and
yeah, no, absolutely. And you
along with it.
Yeah, no, and you can't be the guy that works at the factory that has one skill that when the factory goes away, he doesn't know what to do. That's why the side hustles and the entrepreneurship is so important.
And to pass it down, my father passed that down to me, and my grandfather. Mostly my father. My father was up there in Fairbanks when I was born in the military. He was always working on electronics. He was an electronics major. There's buildings in Fort Gordon. Signal is the new buildings are all dedicated to him. He pretty much was the head of the GPS from the start. He was always going to school, but he was always teaching school, and he was always teaching people things. And he taught me at an early age that you can't get by on one skill, and you got to know a lot of things about a lot of different things if you're going to survive the world today, tomorrow, and in the future. And my grandfather was the same way, and I've done it with my children, and they're all, I've come back here. I couldn't be any prouder. People saying, boy, you raised those kids good.
Right.
I taught them to work. I taught them skills. I taught them that they never learn skills. And they said, Dad, do we have to be a guy like you? No. You be what you want to be. One's a great mechanic, one of the best. The other one's a carpenter, one's a social worker. But you know what? They did what they wanted to do, but they had the interest to do it. I didn't drive them to do anything they didn't want to do. I helped them.
Right.
And the worst thing a parent can do to a kid is make them do something they don't want to do. And I said, you don't have to be like me. I was mowing lawns at 10, and delivering papers and doing everything I could do. So you've got to have that drive. You've got to have those skill sets. And, as a young person coming up, I see so many people now, and have had them work with me, that are way behind the 8 ball, 30 years old and still don't have a skill set that they need to do what they're doing, And it's like I said on one of the projects I was on recently this summer, and one guy was like 28, one was 24, the other one's 32. And we were talking one day, and I asked how old he was, and they told me, and I looked at the youngest guy, and I said, when I was your age, at 24, I think he was, or something like that, I'd already built 6 houses and numerous decks and garages. I came out of a vocational school, plus grandfathers, uncles, and everybody around me were carpenters. And I had that skill already, all right? And I've learned many more since, So it's a progressive thing. You can't stop doing it. You can't stop learning it. You can't stop.
Right.
The next thing is coming. You and I are going to die, and there's going to be altogether new ideas, new things, new products. Everything's going to be new all the time doing this carpenter work. People say, what do you think of this, Jeff? I don't know. Well, I'll let you know in 20 years. I don't think it'll be alive. But anyways, you see what I'm saying? It's a progressive thing. You have to progress. You have to do it, And that's what this country's missing right now. That's what they need to do.
Jeff, thank you. Thank you, my friend. Thank you so much for coming on board and joining us and being part of it today. I appreciate it. I agree. I think everything that Chris has been talking about this morning and you were just talking about, we got to have that. We got to have the plan B. We got to take personal ownership of what we're doing. Because as we just pointed out for the first 2 hours of the show today, we can't affect what's going on in the state in a direct way. We can put pressure. We can do that. We can control our own houses. We can control what we do. And that's what I think what we need to do. All right, my friends, we are out of time for today. We got to go tomorrow. Well, I'll leave it as a surprise because even I don't know who's going to be on tomorrow. I got a couple irons in the fire. We'll see what happens. Overall, be kind to one another. Love one another. Live well. The Michael Dukes Show. Common Sense Radio. Thank you, my friends. I appreciate you all joining us in the chat room today, especially you early birds like Mikhail and Brian. Thank you for coming on board. It's, I just love it. I love interacting with you guys. Yes, sometimes even Harold. I interact with him sometimes. Love that. Sometimes I hate it. But, got to keep me humble. That's what it's all about. Drink North Pole coffee. I'm drinking my own coffee, Chris. Although I do love me some North Pole snickerdoodles. They have that at Costco down here, and I admit, I bought a couple bags of that because that's some good stuff right there. You can't miss it. All right, my friends. We will see you tomorrow. Thank you for being part of it. Have a great day. You will have a great day.
Goodbye.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Dukes Show.
Well,
Bye.